So we are looking at 2A, and we've already started this one, right? And the reason we started this one is because I kind of told you that this part of it was fair game for the quiz. So if I told you we had zeros of 2 and of I, we could write our factored form of this. Maybe try and erase just a couple of things. That's probably too much. We could write that in factored form as x minus 2 and then x minus I, x plus I. So if you remember when we did, that's not what I wanted. When we did our radicals, we had to do plus root 3 and minus root 3. Same thing with I. You need to do the plus and you have to do the minus. So if I tell you these are what the zeros are, you can write it in this form and then we can simplify out. Now, that's not exactly what this problem asked, though, okay? This is what a problem could ask, but this problem extended it a little further. This problem said, well, it contains the point -1, 8, okay? That being said, we can treat this just like we have treated our quadratics in the past, where we have an A value out front. All that I'm gonna do now to finish this problem is plug the X value in at -1 in for my X's and plug 8 in for all my Y's, and then we're gonna solve that out. Okay, nothing else changes. We've actually done the hardest part already. So I'm going to kind of bring my problem up here. 8 is going to go in there for my Y. I don't know what my A value is. I don't know what the shrink or stretch value of that is. And all of my X's are going to become -1s. So I've got -1 to the third minus 2 times -1 squared plus -1, because that's just your X, and then minus 2. So the only thing I've changed from here is that I just plugged in -1 for all my X's, and I plugged 8 in for all my Y's. Now this left side, or this right side, excuse me, should simplify down to just one number, and then I will divide it. So I've got 8 equals A times, well, -1 to the third is -1. -1 squared is +1 times -2 is just -2. And then I've got that -1 minus 2. So what's that going to be? -6. And then we can solve that. 8 equals A times -6 divided by -6 on both sides. A is going to equal -4/3. And so that is going to be my leading factor of this problem. I'm just going to go back. The only thing I'm going to do is put in that -4/3 for that A. Everything else is going to stay the same. I believe there's a problem like that on your homework, so that's why I wanted to talk about this today before we kind of moved on. There's also one like letter B on your homework, but we are not going to do letter B, so you don't have to do the one that looks like B on your homework. I think it's the first problem on your homework. You're welcome to try it. I'll have an answer on the board on Monday, but I'm not going to grade you on it. I'm not going to ask you to do it. We're really not going to talk about it. Okay. So this is kind of the only new thing we're going to do. Letter C is a kind of an extension of what we have been doing, finding our zeros, finding our PRRs, getting our brains a little warmed up before we review and take this quiz. All right, so let's jump down to that 2C now. So flip your paper over, I think. This is the last problem for this section of this chapter. Okay. All right, and since we should know the steps for this, you're going to have to help me out a little bit. The first thing I like to do is always what? Factor. Can I factor this? No, bummer. What's the second thing I like to do? PRR is good. How do I do my PRRs for this problem? Good, my constant over my coefficient. What would the factors of the constant be? Very good. 1, 2, 3, 6. Do not forget that plus or minus up front. And then what are my factors of my leading coefficient? 1, perfect. I promise we will have more than 1 in the future, but on this quiz, it will only always just be 1. So just don't feel that stressed out about that. It's just going to be 1. Okay. So now I just go one more step, list them just without that fraction of 1 on the bottom, plus or minus 1, 2, 3, and 6. Okay, now that I have all my PRRs, all my possible roots, what am I going to do to find out what actually works? Plug them in, good. And you can do this a couple different ways. So like on the quiz, you can just write plug in and you can list the ones you plug in until you find the one that works. So I'd say plug in 1. If that works, circle it. If that doesn't work, do -1, etc., etc. You also can show me. You can be like, okay, I did 1 to the 4th plus 1 to the 3rd plus 5 times 1 squared -1 -6. And then you can tell me if that works or not. Let's see, you can plug into your calculator. I think I can do this one by hand at least. 1 plus 1 plus 5 -1 -6. Well, that's gonna be 7, and that's gonna be -7. Oh, perfect. I think this one works, doesn't it? Let's say yes, we're good. It equals 0. So I might just circle and be like, we did it. Okay, once I find the one that works, once I find the one that when you plug in, you get 0, now what? What'd you say? Put in the synthetic division? Yep, very good. Synthetically divide, put it in my little house. So 1 goes in my house, and then I've got 1, 1, 5, -1, -6. 1, 1, 5, -1, 6. Okay, perfect. Carry that 1 down. So I've got 1, 2, 7, 6, 6, oops, 0. 1, 2, 7, 6. Now what do I do with these? Make my equation, good, write it out. So this becomes, what was that, x to the 3rd plus 2x squared plus 7x plus 6. Okay. Now, the reason I didn't do this yesterday is because we can't factor this. And I want you to get used to the fact that you can factor and that you can quadratic formula, okay? It does not always happen, but every so often you get one that doesn't factor. If you can't factor, then we have to go back to our PRRs and see if there's another PRR that works, okay? Which is not tough, it's just annoying, because you're like, I just want to be factoring, I want to be quadratic formula, I want to be done. We have to go back to your PRRs and try something else. So we're gonna go back to our original list. We already used +1, so we don't want to try that again. Now let's just try the next easy one. What should I try next? -1, deny.
How do we can't then the quadratic?
Great question. You can't put this in the quadratic formula because we've got an x to the 3rd. You have to have an x squared to put in the quadratic formula. And I also know I can't factor because if I were to take something out of the first 2 terms and then the second 2 terms, like what's left won't match, so it just won't group. Okay, so I'm gonna try -1. So again, you can just say plug in -1 and see if it works, and you can plug it into your calculator. You can also write it by hand. That's
So,
-1. Oh,
One
yes.
be an X,
Excuse me, one more time.
is one an X? Like,
Yes, 1 is, yeah, 1 is a 0, it's your x. 2 minus 7 plus 6. That's gonna be 1. That's gonna be -1. Oh, it worked out again. Oh, thank goodness. You don't have to do it by hand, I just am too lazy to get the calculator app up right now, and it's easy enough numbers. Everybody's okay with -1 working? Okay, then what do I do with that -1? Synthetically divide. Good. And then now I have another polynomial x squared plus x plus 6. This feels better because now I have a quadratic, so I either can factor or I can quadratic formula. Can you factor this one? So we're just gonna have to quadratic formula. Probably used too much space earlier. We'll move all this over a little bit. So now we're gonna come over here and quadratic formula. My A is 1, my B is 1, my C is 6, okay. -1 plus or minus square root of -1 or +1 squared minus 4 times 1 times 6 all over 2 times 1. -1 plus or minus 1 minus 24 over 2. -23 over 2. Am I moving too fast? Okay, okay. And then what does that -23 become? Very good. So I like this, which I know it's annoying. You're like, this is such an ugly answer. Yeah, but I can't mess up because I can't simplify, and it's very clear. I have zeros at -2 plus or minus I root 23 over 2. And if I were to list all of my zeros, we have 1, we have -1, and we have this ugly fraction. So I am gonna make a point to list those all together up here. 23 over 2. I'll zoom back out if you need to see that quadratic formula, because I know that was kind of a lot. Okay, yeah, but
So when you do the second division, we don't use the original. we use this.
you use the new equation. Yeah, don't go back to the original equation, because essentially you've already factored it out. So you've already been like, okay, I know that 1 takes out, you don't want to go back to the beginning and do -1. It will work, it's just like more work than we want to do. Yeah, Ryan.
Wait, so why did we have to do it like again? Like, why did we know like to do -1?
We had to do it again because I could not factor this and I could not quadratic formula it. So because what I normally do didn't work, I had to go back to my PRRs. I tried -1 first because I knew with my list of PRRs, I had plus or minus 1, 2, 3, 6. And I already found +1 worked. And so I don't want to go try one of the higher numbers just because it's a lot more work. So let me try the smallest number first. Right, any other questions on this? Okay, I'm gonna just stop the video then and we can review for this little quiz. You do have that homework due next time I see you.